welcome each of you to the Anatomy of the 12-Step Study Group. Tonight, we will be delving into Step 3. I'm Vernell, a recovering codependent and an adult child of a dysfunctional family. I'll be one of your trusted servants and host for tonight's study. And
I'm Nancy. I'm a member of Al-Anon and a codependent, and I'll be your other host for this evening.
thank you. Madeline, who is here with us, will also be assisting in our session tonight. Each of us will spend 3 to 5 minutes talking about Step 3 from our own personal experience. Then we will open up the room for discussion, where you can talk about your discovery as it pertains to this step. We do not crosstalk in this meeting. This serves a purpose of keeping our meeting a safe space. It also maintains focus of our step work on ourselves. We want to hear your thoughts, perceptions, challenges, and discoveries. No matter how long you've been involved in a 12-step program, you are a valuable member with your own experiences. Whatever brought you into the rooms, the solution is the same, the 12-step recovery program of your choosing. This study group is not affiliated with nor
I had never been taught how to work life better. I did what I was taught and it wasn't working. And I was miserable when I got into these rooms. I gave up because I didn't have the right answers to live a life. But you did. And I found the answers in the 12-step program. So what does this third step mean to me? It simply means that I became teachable. The third step is simply becoming teachable. And for me, I didn't need the God concept to do that. I love the idea that all problems are solvable, and the frustration comes with finding the options or the possible solutions to all of my problems. And that's just learning new ways of doing things. So, can an old dog learn new tricks? You bet they can. And I did. So I didn't need a God to give up all of my old ways of thinking. I was hurting so much when I came into recovery that I didn't need anything but courage to get through this one. I love that phrase too about my sick brain can't fix my sick brain. And that's the way I was when I got into recovery. So all I needed to do is learn new tricks. And with or without a God, it just wouldn't matter to me. Some of y'all know that I love slogans, so I picked out a few in the minute that I have left to teach you or to share with you what I learned in this third step. And that was, in recovery, I learned to listen, and then I listened to learn. And y'all taught me a lot. I believe that mistakes are common, and I made so many mistakes early on because I didn't know how. But don't pencils come with erasers? Maybe I need an eraser when I was born, I don't know. Another one is a 12-step recovery is an opportunity to learn new realities, and I did. That's what y'all taught me, was a new way of doing life. And I think the big thing I learned in this step was to take out the trash. The trash was my old way of thinking, and it really got me nowhere. So it wasn't good for me. It's not easy to find happiness in ourselves, but it's not easy to find it elsewhere. And I love that phrase, that slogan, because I didn't know how, but I could find it. I could find the answers that worked for me. And I learned them in these rooms. It did, however, take courage. It took courage to try on new ways of thinking, doing, and feeling, and all that. This slogan says, courage is the fuel of change that challenges my status quo, and it really did. But it took a lot of work, and this slogan I also like, doesn't cook rice. I had to do the work and make the changes to make life much, much better. And I think I'm going to stop with this one that says, all growth requires change, and all change is a matter of adjustment. And that's what I had to do. And the third step, I could easily do it without a God or any kind of deity. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Madeline. Thank you for sharing. I'm going to go next, and then we will have Nancy. Okay. Made a decision. I did some research on the word decision. It comes from the Latin word meaning to cut away. The root word is scissors or incision. If all the alternatives were cut away, what would be left? When it came to step 3, it seemed obvious. I had a big decision to make. Could I trust this evolving God of my understanding enough to turn my will, my entire life, even my crazy fear-based attempts at controlling, fixing, advising, and micromanaging everyone, including me? This was the big question, and this was a big job. Decisions, so many every day, and all of us have had to make them. I've made many big and small decisions in my life. After much thought out consideration, my decision on this was based on a logical conclusion. The new and improved God of my understanding deserved a chance. Why not? I had no peace. I needed to know God, not superficially, instead at a deep, intimate level. It was time to let go and let God handle my unmanageable life. What did I have to lose but misery? God's mercies are new in my life every day. So why not make a daily decision to turn my will and life over to the care of my new and improved God? I pray, meditate, read, and use positive affirmations. I like to use a physical symbol, and a tool that has helped me over the years is a God box. I write down my struggles, put them on paper, I've dated them, folded them, and put them in the box, and I let go of the outcome, and I can go back later and see that those things turned out exactly the way they were meant to. Turn my will and life over. The big red book says, to the adult child, rigid control equates to safety. Giving up my way of doing things is as difficult as asking me to jump out of an airplane without a parachute. I was now ready. I had decided to take a leap of faith and let go, fully believing my higher power was there to catch me. I take this part of the step by looking at past evidence. I get honest. The fact is, I can look back and see God was right beside me all along. It was I who chose to discard his will and instead submit to mine. Many moons ago, I felt a very real presence of God in the room with me. I was crying myself to sleep. I saw open hands and a look of love I will never forget. This offered me hope, assurance, and gave me peace beyond my understanding. All this as my oldest son was heading off to a sober living halfway house after being in a treatment center for 28 days. What more proof did I need? This was one of my big spiritual awakenings. Care of God as we understand God. What does it mean if I allow someone to care for me completely and totally? That concept may frighten me, or it could bring me peace. A picture perfect example might be of a new mother, one who is healthy and loving. She cares for her child because she wants to keep the child safe and because she loves the child. This God I now understand was nothing like the mean, cruel, punishing getcha God of my childhood. I am now aware of feeling safe, secure, loved, and cared for. My best interests were at heart. I took step 3, I repeat it on a regular basis. ACA says this step is a bottomless well of hope. Don't worry about wearing it out. I began by working step 1 and step 2 to the best of my ability. Yes, the steps are numbered for a reason. The first 3 steps are my solid foundation for successfully working my recovery program. I no longer need to be in the director's chair running the show. Today, I trust, have faith, and I let go of the outcomes. I'm learning to love more and fear less because of step 3. I'm going to point to the source on step 3, and this is from the daily affirmations from strengthening my recovery. Step 3 is a well of grace we can return to again and again and dip out self-acceptance, self-assurance, and love. Each time we take step 3, we drink down God's love. What a beautiful thought. It gives me a deep feeling of peace and serenity. I can now let go and breathe, a sigh of relief. I am in the big loving hands of God. As a good friend and fellow traveler, I think who is on this meeting says, I can let go of the reins. It feels like freedom to me. Thank you for letting me share. And now we'll have Nancy.
Okay. I should have done this already, but I got so interested listening to Vernell that I didn't look up my notes. So hold on one second. This won't take me but just a couple seconds. There it is. Okay. So, you know, I too also take step 3 on a daily basis. I have a faith in a higher power, which I went into last time, so I won't go down that road again, but I take step 3 on a daily basis. And I also looked up the definition of decision. And the definition that I found said, decision is a conclusion or resolution reached after consideration. So I thought that part about reached after consideration was a really important part for me. I have considered, you know, turning my will and my life over to the care of God. And I know for me, I have evidence that that my higher power works in my life. And so it's easy to turn my will and my life over to the care of God because I have evidence of my higher powers work in my life.
Everything's good. She thought about calling, but she's not gonna.
And I also had to look up the word will because, you know, what is this thing that I'm turning over? What is this? And it said, will is intention or desire for certain things to happen. So my will is, you know, my desire, my intention for things to happen. And when I look at it that way, it's easy to turn my will over, you know. There's some religious philosophies talk about that desire is the beginning of trouble. You know, when you desire something so deeply, it almost becomes your higher power instead of your higher power. And so, you know, when I look at it that way, it becomes easier to turn my will over to God, because a lot of times I don't know what's best for me. A lot of times my higher power has worked things out to be better for me than I could even imagine. Page 2 of 4. Another thing is, I already said I make my decision on a daily basis. When I turn my will and my life over to my higher power, I feel peaceful, I feel serene, And I can practice gratitude very easily because I am thankful for what I have, and I'm in the right frame of mind to carry out my duties, whatever I have to do that day. I'm in the right frame of mind. When I don't turn my will and my life over to the care of my higher power, I feel restless, irritable, and discontent. I feel like I want my way. I feel selfish and inconsiderate, and my thinking is pre-programmed thinking. And so I know that that's the difference for me. I wanted to talk about a couple of examples of times in my life when I have turned my will and my life over to my higher power. Because I think for me, it's always good if I hear examples. So one example that I can think of is I used to have, I still do have poor vision. Right now, my vision is count fingers at 4 feet. It used to be that I could not count fingers, and it was only hand motion at like 1 foot. And so I had been thinking about having this surgery, and it was a real tough decision because it was a surgery that took the rest of the vision out of my other eye. So, it was a real scary thing. So what I did is I got to a point of acceptance with the vision that I had. I got to a point of acceptance where I could live the rest of my life that way and I would have been fine. And once I got to that point of acceptance, then I felt like I could go ahead and turn my will over to God. And if the surgery was meant to be, it would happen. And so that's what I did. Because of a move I made, I met a doctor who was phenomenal. And the pieces of my life just fit together just right for the surgery to happen. And before the surgery, I was very calm and very peaceful because I had turned it over to my higher power and said, God, whatever you want to happen will happen. And so that's what I did. Now, I'm not saying that God was the only instrument involved in that surgery. That doctor's skill, that doctor's abilities, all of that were also involved. But for me to go into that surgery with a calm peace of mind and a level of serenity, I had to have turned it over to my higher power. He commented to a nurse that I was the calmest patient he'd ever seen for that particular surgery. And that wasn't me, that was my higher power. Because I had turned my will and my life over to my higher power. Another example I have is my current job. I applied for my current job before the pandemic ever started. And I was in a job at that time that I could have stayed in that job. I was okay staying in that job, but it wasn't really what I wanted, but I was okay. And I had accepted it. I had accepted that job for what it was. I could go to work every day and be okay. I, had just accepted it. And then one day I saw this job and it was close to my family. So I applied. And after I applied, it was like I never gave it another thought. The application was sent and I didn't give it any more thought. And then the pandemic hit and all the places where I work all over the country had hiring freezes. And so I thought, well, there's no way I'm getting this job. And so again, turned it over to my higher power. There's no way this is going to happen. So I just turned my will and my life over to the care of my higher power. Said, if you want this to happen, God, you make it happen. Otherwise, I will be content here and I will do what I need to do here to be helpful to mankind. And so it seemed like all the pieces fell in place just within a matter of 2 months. After I interviewed, within 2 months, I had sold a house, bought a house, moved 1,000 miles away, had done all this stuff. And all of it happened within 2 months. And that's because every day I woke up and I turned my will and my life over to God. Now, does that mean that I think God did it all for me? No. I took care of the footwork. It's like that phrase, if you have a toothache and you're praying to God to remove your toothache, you better be on your way to the dentist. You have to do the footwork along with it. And the third example I have is right now, a niece that I care very deeply about has cancer. And I'm in the process of turning my will and my life over to the care of God with that cancer. And when she was diagnosed, I went through a process of turning my will and my life over to the care of God with this cancer. And I had let go of it. And she went through her first round of chemo. She went through a double mastectomy and everything was good. But my higher power and humanity and whatever you want to call it threw a monkey wrench into things. And now she has to go back through chemo because there's some more cancer cells. I had a real hard time with it. I am not going to lie. I did not want to turn that one over. I called somebody from the fellowship and I had to understand, I had to get to a point where I could understand why it was so hard to let go of those feelings. And then I could get to a point where I was like, okay, I can let it go and have serenity. And I know that me having serenity and letting it go is going to be more helpful to her than me being a basket case about it. So I was able to then let it go to my higher power. So, I added that example because I don't want you to think that it's just like, boom, over. It's not like that. It takes time. It takes going through the feelings involved and getting to a place of acceptance. A place of acceptance of whatever it is that you're trying to turn over to God, and a place of detachment from whatever it is that you're trying to turn over to God. It takes work. Like somebody else said, I think Madeline said, it takes work. It doesn't happen overnight. But the more I do it, the easier it comes. I have I'm in a helping profession for my job. And I have this little thing that before I walk out of my office to go to the waiting room and get the next person that I'm going to help, I say to my higher power, let me be what this person needs. And that's my way of turning over my will to God for that next period of time that I'm helping the next person. It's sometimes it's amazing the stuff that comes out of my mouth. I'm like, where did that come from? But that's my experience with turning my will and my life over to the care of God. I hope that people heard what they needed to hear, and with that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Madeline. Awesome. Okay, it is now time to open up for discussion on step 3. Please raise your digital hand. If calling in, please raise your hand by notifying the chat room. If you have a question you cannot put in the chat, you can email the anatomy 12 steps 2022 @gmail.com, which I think Ava has put in the chat. And Ava will be monitoring the chat box. Thank you, Ava. Please be mindful of the length of your shares. We have a large group, and we will have time for you to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes. As a reminder, this meeting is a minimum of 1 hour to a maximum of 1.5 hours. Anyone can begin. And who would like to get us started? And I see 2 hands raised. So Abby, we'll let you start. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that was really great. And I just kind of wanted to jump in before I forgot everything I wanted to say. But I am one of those that had a real hard time. Of course, I had a hard time. My background is CODA, by the way. And I had a real hard time with letting go, obviously, but I had a really hard time of letting go to a God. And I've always considered my higher power either my moral compass, certain family members that I might attach to that, or the universe. But I came to, the first time I did step 3, I'm looking at my book that I started writing in 5 years ago, and I have will equals willingness. So when I am willing to let go, that's turning my will, that's me letting go of control. I'm willing to do that. Then I had to tackle the God part. First of all, I really don't understand why God is always referred to as a he. It could just as easily in my mind be a she. But to me, life is what I'm willing to turn, when I'm willing to let go and accept what life is presenting to me, and I'm willing to have it laid out in front of me and decide how I'm going to respond to that, just as I would in recovery. But I do have, as some of you may have heard me say, I have my my alarm set to 9:37 every morning, because 9:37 means something to me. So I have 2, I call it my spirit of life moment. And when it goes off, I have 2 prayers, both CODA-based. One of them refers to a higher power. The other one I specifically chose because I want to develop a connection to something, to that higher power. I want to give that higher power some sort of entity. So the prayer very quickly is, higher power, I give to you all that I am and all that I will be for your healing and direction. Make new this day as I release all my worries and fears, knowing that you are by my side. Please help me to open up myself to your love, to allow your love to heal my wounds, and to allow your love to flow through me and to those around me. May your will be done this day and always. May it be so. And the you is life. And it's the you to me is the ability for me to just accept and respond in a healthy manner. So that's my higher power. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you, Abby. Pat, you're next. Thank you.
All right. My name is Pat. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. I am an adult child. I am a codependent and an Al-Anon member. And I'm in Virginia, by the way. I came into these meetings probably more agnostic than atheist. And I too had a lot of trouble with 2 and 3. My mother had worked at a church, and I saw so much dysfunction. I saw the preacher stealing. I saw so much stuff. And I also felt like, God had left me in a really bad situation and blah, blah, blah. I was mad at God, for a while, a long time ago. But by the time I came into these programs, I just really didn't believe that there was a God. So when I got to 2 and 3, thank goodness my sponsor helped me understand, that it's a God of my understanding, or it is a belief of my understanding. It does not have to be an entity that is out there someplace. To me, when I look at step 3, it really has to do more with trust. Trust that I don't have the solution. So I make a decision to turn my determination, my wants, my needs, my everything. You know, by golly, I want life to go this way and I want him to say that. You know, all those things that drive me nuts that they won't do. In other words, I have to have the trust that things will turn out the way they need to turn out, that I can't control what's going on out there. To me, it was about acceptance that I'm not in charge. Even though sometimes, you know, I never thought about it, that I was the one thinking I was in charge, but I was trying to maneuver and get things to go the way I wanted them to go. As I sat here listening to the people that were opening it up, I think for me, one thing that hit me in step 3 was fear. You know, turn my will and my life over to something else. You know, that has to do a lot with trust. Nancy was talking about that in a way. It's trust that life will turn out as it's going to. It's trust that no matter what I can't control how life's going to turn out. I can do my part. I can't do that. So step 3 for me is about trust. It's about acceptance. It's about letting go of the fear. Bottom line. So anyway, thanks for letting me share. I'll shut up and let somebody else go.
Thank you, Pat. Barbara T., you're next.
Hi, I'm Barbara T. I am a recovering adult child and grateful to be a part of this wonderful fellowship. Made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God. First, I have to say that my understanding of God is still unfolding. I have developed some characteristics that I came up with myself about God. And I'm one of the biggest things that I am so grateful for in the 12-step program, and this, you know, most of them was that I could have a higher power, and it's at my higher power. I do call my higher power God, but I can come up with a description of who that higher power is. And I looked up some of the words because sometimes I'm not real clear on what some of the words mean in some of the steps, and just to get some clarity. And I never looked up what the human will was before, but the definition that I found was the human will is the capacity to actively decide what to do instead of reacting automatically to stimuli, which is, you know, for a large part of my life, I was definitely a reactor. Because I grew up in a very dysfunctional home. I think I mentioned both my parents were alcoholics, and I was so unprepared for life. But I do remember, you know, growing up at a young age, my grandmother took me to church. So I always did believe in something. And as I grew older, I started trying to develop, you know, a closer relationship with this God that I was learning about in church. And therefore, I've always had a connection with, you know, I call it a source or a spirit that's greater than me. And I'm very, very grateful for that. And every morning I say there's a third step prayer that I say, and it goes something like, dear, higher power, I offer myself to thee to build with me and to do with me as you will. Please relieve me of the bondage of self so that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties so that victory over them will show those that you would have me serve, of your transforming power, of your unconditional love, and your wonderful way of life. And may I do your will or do life your way. And I try to start my day off with that. And that's kind of my way of turning my will in my life over to the care of a loving God. And not only my life, I do that with my children's life too. So I won't try to get so involved in, what's going on in their lives as well. And it seems to keep me in a much better place. And when I get all bent out of shape, I know, it's probably because I've taken my will back. And such a big part of it too for me is acceptance. Just like someone else had mentioned, acceptance is just a huge part of how I try to live each day, and accepting life on life terms, whether I like it or not. Just coming to a conclusion of acceptance, and just learning to, to take the steps, to take the action. And I struggle with making decisions, especially big decisions, small decisions. I've always struggled because I didn't know how. I just didn't know how. And I thought I would be making the wrong decision. But I've learned that if I make a decision and it's not a good one, I just make another decision and don't beat myself up about it. And just, make another decision. And, things usually, they will work out the way they're supposed to work out. So, and there's just one little thing I wanted to read, just one sentence out of Courage to Change. It says, decision is a risk rooted in the courage of being free. And I do think, making decisions, and it does, to take courage, but I can't get away from it. It's part of life. So thank you all for the opportunity to give me to thank you for the opportunity to share, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Barbara. Karen from Ontario, you're next.
Hi everyone, Karen, ACA, Ontario. Yeah, I've been having issues with this. I think I probably do tend to be more to the agnostic side as well, and just with step 2 and 3. And the thing is, though, is like, I'm really open to having a higher power. It's something like, I don't know, I just think it would be great. But like at this point in my life, it's just nothing feels real or authentic to me. Like, but I am open and I want there to be a higher power. So I am open to this. But for me right now, I think like I'm just turning my will over to this process, to this program. And I have to trust that, right? And for me, and who knows, as I give up control, maybe other things will come to fruition. And yeah, so with the questions, it's just, yeah, I think instead of like the higher power, that this process can restore me to sanity and clarity, and working the program every day and just having trust and faith in the process. But it is scary because I feel like I'm on this edge of a cliff right now, where to give up total control, I don't like, I see the results in my fellow travelers, and I know that there's peace, and what I've been doing for, 43 years is not working, right? And so, but it's just so scary to see what's gonna, in a sense, like this fear of just letting go, like having to possibly change everything, having to, yeah, just examine everything and really look into myself, but into everything, right? So like, I just feel right now like I'm just teetering kind of on that edge, and just like I have to make that decision for myself to just kind of, give it up and trust that it will work out. So anyways, that's all I had to share, and thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Karen, for sharing. MJ, you're next.
Thank you and good night, everybody. So grateful for this meeting and so grateful for the people that is doing service and sharing and doing all the work that they're doing. Thank you for your time and hard work. Let me time myself. I actually, this has been such a like beautiful journey. It's my first time in the steps, even though I have several years in the program, but with these questions, like I've realized that I definitely used to have such a strong connection with my higher power and in a way kind of like surrendering, but not really. And I'm realizing how intellectual, like how much I have intellectualized the idea of a higher power instead of like living it and experiencing it. And actually today, well, I was working on the homework, and it was quite interesting because it was like feeling super exhausted. I've been working and doing a lot of things like work and cooking and cleaning and stuff like that. Being a, you know, like a working woman and house church and all that, it's kind of like becoming a little bit too much. But today I was like, at 3, I was like, okay, I need to stop, and I didn't. So it's like I was really exhausted, you know, like when you're working and you're at like, I need to stop. It doesn't matter if it's 3, like just take a break, take a nap or something. And I didn't. I kept working until 5, and then I was like getting very irritated. I was being mean at my parents and mean at my partner, and then like something in me kind of like this voice was like, just go to the park and work on your step 3. And I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna do that, which is something I've never done before, but it was kind of like quite interesting, kind of like this, it was just like a message. It wasn't, of course, like a voice that came from the skies and said like, but it was just kind of like this intuition, this feeling. And I went and I worked on the step, and I like really realized a lot of things. But the first thing and most interesting thing is that when I was doing the research about what is, you know, like the state, like we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of a God as we understood God. Well, the first thing that came in my research is like we made a decision to practice self-love, to trust in a higher power for understanding. Like we made a decision to practice self-love and basically like self-care, which is exactly what I didn't do at 3 o'clock when I was supposed to. I needed to take a break and I didn't. So it's just, I'm really learning that my higher power, like in a very subtle ways and sometimes in very like obvious ways, can like speak to us in like little signs, and I'm just learning to read them. Anyway, sorry for rambling a lot. I'm exhausted, but I'm here, and thank you everybody for hearing and for just being here. Have a beautiful night.
Thank you, MJ. Laura Michelle, you're next.
Hi, I'm Laura, CODA and adult child of alcoholic and dysfunctional family. The word I kept writing down when I was doing the step 3 homework was fear. I do have a lot of fear around giving up my current patterns of behavior because I feel that if I do, then I will be alone. Is definitely my greatest fear. And I realized that my whole life up until this point, I've done so many dysfunctional things trying to avoid that fear. I got divorced a couple years ago, and I had the realization afterward that, you know, my getting married was kind of a solution to this fear I have of being alone. I was raised to believe that it's most important to, you know, as a woman to grow up and get married and raise a family. And when I got divorced, all of that seemed lost, you know, my future. And I didn't know who I was, or, you know, what I was going to do with my life. It just felt like impossible. And when I was doing the step 3 homework and the question asked, you know, how do you know God's plan is better than yours? And my divorce came to mind because it's not something I ever would have chosen for myself. Um, but now that it's over and I am, you know, a single woman living on my own, I'm getting to know myself in a way that I never had before. And so it's challenging, but it's also a really beautiful thing. And I know it's an opportunity I wouldn't have had if that hadn't happened. Um, and also in doing step 3, I am trying to learn to give up the dream that I have of just being this puppet of like this woman who's going to get married and have a family. Like there could be a plan that God has for me that's greater than that, that's, you know, maybe better in that than that in some way. And I have to be open to that. I have to really question why it is that I want those things. Is it something I really want, or is it something that I was taught? Um, and so that was kind of a freeing feeling to think that maybe God has something in store for me that's better than I can imagine. And kind of giving up my codependent behaviors is an important part to trusting that there's something better out there. You know, that has more to do than just with what I mean to another person or what my role is in a family. Um, so I'm trying to work on that. I do struggle a little bit with feeling, sometimes I feel jealous of people that believe so fully and wholeheartedly in God, because I sometimes struggle with that. I don't, you know, go to church or anything, but I really want to believe in a higher power. So I appreciate the part of step 3 that says, you know, as you understand God. So, you know, God can be whoever I want him to be. So that was also a comforting thought. With that, I will pass. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you, Laura Michelle. Jane, you're next.
Hi, I'm Jane. I'm a grateful recovering codependent. And in thinking about the second question, every day we make a decision to turn our will and our life over to a higher power. Write about how you practice turning it over. In response to that, every day I start my day thanking God for this new day, this new opportunity for a fresh start, a new beginning. It's especially freeing or comforting to me when I've had a really rough day or night the night before. I pray for the knowledge of God's will and the power to carry it out. As a codependent in recovery, I do not ask God to change anyone else. And this has been really a significant change since I've been in CODA, just the way I pray. I remind myself throughout the day that God is in control. When my thoughts start to drift to codependent thinking, I find that as time goes on, I can more and more quickly shift my thinking to I cannot change another person, what they think or how they act. And it doesn't really matter what other people think about me or anything else. I also start my day with daily readings from several books that ensure my thoughts for the day are healthy thoughts. I would also like to say that my understanding of God has really dramatically changed over time. I went through a period in my life where I had decided there is no God. There can't be a God because of some traumatic events that occurred in my life. And when I made the decision to be open to God again, I really had a hard time trusting. And I prayed frequently to asking God to help me in my unbelief. And over time, my faith grew. Number 3 says, as I learned to trust my higher power, I developed faith. Write about how turning your life over to the care of your higher power does not mean giving up your life. As my faith has grown, I've experienced the powerful difference it has made to choose God's will and God's wisdom. I have free will, so every day, every hour, I can choose my will or God's will. Choosing God's will does not mean giving up my life. It means choosing the best possible life because God wants what's best for me. He can see the bigger picture, past, present, future. I can trust God even when I fail to listen to his direction. I can trust him to gently redirect me as I surrender. And I have found the serenity prayer to just be very simple and really powerful in my recovery from codependence. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And just one last thing I'd like to share. It's a passage that I meditated on for years. In fact, I used to make jewelry, and I would attach a little prayer box to a bracelet, and I hand wrote on every card that would be attached to the bracelet what Paul had written to the Philippians. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your request to God, and the peace of God, which transcends understanding, will guard your heart and mind. As I meditated on it, and again, I wrote it hundreds of times on these little cards. But the promise there is not that God is going to give me what I want or make things turn out the way I want them to turn out. No, the promise is that the peace of God, which transcends understanding, will guard my heart and mind. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you, Jane, for sharing. Janice, go ahead when you're ready.
Hello, I am Janice, codependent and from Boston. And as a Christian, growing up in a household of faith, I would have expected that faith would come very easily and without question, but it hasn't, and it has. I have had my highs and lows, and when I was going through my divorce, or prior to that, I found that it was very easy to become bitter at God. But I'll just go ahead and that's just a little preamble to other people. In question 1, have I accepted that I'm powerless? Of course, I know this is true. I need to turn my life over to the care of God daily. Stop attempting to control my life. I think the main thing was to feel the power of believing. When I believe, it is such a powerful feeling. And I think what I have been taught, or we have been taught, is the unseen world is more real than the seen world. The 2, every day we make our decision to turn prayer and reminders, asking God to leave it to him. I use self-compassion, tell myself that I'm not in control. We can only do or have the strength for what God gives us on a certain moment. So he gives me the power from the Spirit moment by moment. Number 3 was, as I learned, I developed faith. Well, I mentioned about my faith. My faith hit a very low point, but I refused to give it up. And it was a long road back until I finally realized how much he loved me and the proof of his love to get me out of that relationship. But I've learned that does not exonerate my responsibilities, but this is the most empowering action we can take, giving over to our higher power. We cannot change God's mind. He already has a plan for us. We are simply the vehicle to transport. Finally, I came to it on 4. How do I know his plan? God has the best in mind for me, has a greater idea, and knows what's ahead eternally for me, preparing us in love, grace, and patience. I have again proof of this plan as how my marriage transpired and ended, and the truth setting me free. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Janice. Jen B, you're next. You ready?
Hey, everybody, I'm Jen. I'm a codependent and I'm an adult child. This one was a tough one for me for a long time. And when I first started in CODA, I wasn't really able to do this, which means I wasn't really able to fully embrace recovery. And I always thought, well, for a time, I thought I'll do this without God. And that didn't work for me, because I still really needed spirituality. I grew up with a strong religious upbringing, and so I was taught about a God that was judgmental and vengeful. And I think because of that, my prayers were very obsessive compulsive. I was terrified that if I forgot one person that I cared about in a prayer, that something bad would happen to them. And after a while, I completely disconnected from that practice altogether. And I went through a period where I didn't believe in a God. But I always felt a spiritual connection and something greater than me. And there were plenty of times in my life that I had situations that kind of proved that. I remember being in a snowstorm in upstate New York that I drove through. It was a blizzard, and I have no idea how I got home safely, but I did. There were cars off the road all over the place. I got home safe, and all I did was pray the whole time. But you know, I did get into this practice of making other people my higher power. Did that with my first husband. That didn't work. He was an alcoholic. We got divorced. And then got to the point where, you know, I was trying to control everything in my life up until 2 years ago when I hit a wall. You know, I just burned out. And I realized in that process that a big part of what was missing from my life was spirituality, and that I needed it back for me personally. I got back into recovery, and it has changed my life. What I did was I started looking for the things that most inspired me, or where I felt most connected to something bigger than myself, and that's in nature for me. And I started gardening, and we get a lot of butterflies where I live, and so I started planting everything they like. And now I get these caterpillars. I watch the caterpillars eat the plants, and then I watch them cocoon, and then I watch them turn into butterflies and fly away, and it's miraculous to me. And that's when I started saying, oh yeah, I have a higher power. I call my higher power them, because I don't personify my higher power really. It's kind of a light or a greater spirit than me. And I'm so grateful for this program, because that was a huge piece missing from my life. And now on a daily basis, I talk to my higher power. I do turn everything over to my higher power as best I can. And it keeps me in the moment, which in the past I wasn't able to do. I was always anxious because I was always worrying about the future and trying to control everything. But now that I have this program and a higher power, I'm not anxious. I'm rarely anxious. And I was in a partial hospitalization program 2 years ago for anxiety. So I'm very grateful. It's a big piece of my life I got back. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen, for sharing. Laura from Louisiana.
Hi, everyone. I'm sorry I'm not on video. I have COVID. I'm getting over it though. And I'm cognizant of the time. Thank you for all of your service and for your shares tonight, those of you that put together step 3 on the service. Thank you. So I'll be brief with my comments. For me, step 3, I recognize is all about surrender. I recognize that my primary problem that brought me into recovery is control, severe control over me, over others. And I understand, with my background and my childhood and being so independent as early as the age of 7 really makes for an arrogant adult. When we claw our way out of things and we're taking care of adults and we're, stuff that we end up doing produces an adult who thinks they can do much more than they really can. So I appreciate step 3. I am reminded through God, through my faith and my spirituality, that it is not good for me to be in control of everything, and to understand, what I am to be in control of, basically my life, but there's even limits to that. And I appreciate through the scripture so much that God recognizes for me exactly where my weaknesses are. And he doesn't just promise to teach me this program, to show me the steps of this program, to give me fellow travelers like yourself to help me work this program, but he even promises that he can change me, that he can change the weaknesses in me through his strength. That's the promises that I read about in my scripture. And so step 3 for me, it's a beautiful reminder that I am to surrender, constantly surrender, and ask for God's help and turn my will over to his will. And I've seen in my life that when I do that, things get cleared up pretty quickly. And so I'm grateful for all of that. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you. It's 9:04. We don't have anyone else's hand raised. Maybe we'd have time if you have a burning desire. Anyone else would like to share? Okay, Hortensia?
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Hi, I'm Hortensia, an adult child. Thank you everybody for your shares, and thank you for preparing this amazing workshop. The question number 2, I did it like I was in the middle of a chaotic moment at work, and I thought, oh, I should pull out my homework and do some journaling. And so it said, how do you practice turning it over to your higher power daily? And I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't done it today. So in that same moment, I thought, instead of journaling about it, I should just do it. And to me, practicing, I'm very much in my mind all the time. So for me, what works is ritual, which involves body movement. And so I kneel down, I bow, and that is a physical sign of humbleness. And I do my prayer in that position to really, with my whole sense, give really give my will, And so I immediately feel this sense of connection with my higher power. And it's just tears in my eyes and just like, yeah, I can't, I can't deal with this. And it was like a very hard situation. And I just said, I can't, please God help me, because I'm powerless over this. And I did my prayers. I memorized the step 3 prayer from the yellow book from ACA. And so I just say it, and then I just go back with my life. And somehow people suddenly say, oh, we came up with some new ideas on how to go with this. And so it really wasn't up to me. And I really see immediately my higher power working like he or she has my back, So how I practice it is with ritual. That would be like my answer, so that I involve my full self into, giving my will. Thank you for letting me share.
You, Sylvia S.
Hi, everyone. I thought I'd share on this. I'm from Southern Ontario, Windsor, Canada. For question number 4, how do I know that my higher power's plan is better than mine? Well, when I was out west, I had no idea that I'd be coming back home after 27 years out there. So I got divorced and I asked him for help and he helped me. So my higher power's plan is better than mine because I only see my inner circle and the life around me, which was of a dysfunctional behavior, living from a dysfunctional home, and learned thoughts that were false assumptions and not factual, and very limited. My higher power, God, knew me from before I was born to the day I will end my life here on earth. He is far greater than my human mind can imagine. I know this as I read his word with understanding his love for me and his righteousness and how he wants to steer me through him forever. It's a spiritual soul insight for me that he and I bond together in our new unique way. I'm grateful he directed me to him in my late years. I was 50 when I did. And with him and believing for that which I cannot see, and forever at soul peace, forever hereafter with him. Thanks.
Thank you, Sylvia. Okay, great, everybody. Nancy, I'll turn it over to you briefly.
Okay, thanks for everybody's shares on step 3. And okay, so I felt like I needed to say something else there, but I don't know what else I want to say. So thank you, everybody. I want to turn it over to Madeline and Pat, who are going to talk about the homework we do before step 4. So whichever one of you is going to take us through it.
You know, that part we really didn't decide. I'll start, Melanie, once you finish up what I forget to say. Step 4 is going to take us a couple of weeks. And we have divided it up. Ava will send to you a homework sheet. And it is basically a sheet a piece of paper that what we want you to do is read that entire document first. Then we want you to print out, so you're going to get 2 attachments in the email from Ava. One is this document, so we want you to read that first. Then we want you to print out the 4th step chart that will also be attached to the email. At the bottom of this sheet, the one I just showed you, are the instructions for your homework and how we want you to split up working on that chart. Madeline, you got anything else you want to share?
Yeah, no, well, yes and no. Next week, we'll talk about a little bit how this step, number 4 and 5, is really a pivotal point, a pivotal part, at least in my recovery it was. So we're going to split it into looking in depth on columns 1, 2, and 3, and then we'll look at 4, 5, and 6 the following Wednesday night. But it is a tough one. We've known a lot of people are scared to death of this step. That's why we want you to read through this document really well. And we'll talk about it next week as well as get us all started. Pat, I think that's enough, is it not? Are we okay?
Yep, I think that's enough.
Okay, Nancy?
And Vernell is going to close us out.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Pat and Madeline. Please feel free to share the concepts you heard tonight, but not who was here, so that we protect the anonymity of each person in the group. We ask you to please take what you need and leave the rest. If all hearts and minds are clear, we will now close the meeting.